Okay, welcome YouTube. Now, greetings YouTube to the Introspection Hub. Today we have a topic about the society, the current society of South Africa. We're going to be tackling the topic, does the quality of a man in a society determine what type of society the man or the generation will be? So we'll be tackling this from very different perspectives. Gonna go philosophically. Some perspectives are gonna be from a theological standpoint, maybe even a political standpoint. But it will definitely be worth tuning in. I hope you all enjoy the episode. We have on the panel today Comrade Khotso, who is a very intellectual individual. He is very fascinated in the um, He's very fascinated. Sorry, I was distracted by Comrade Khotso, but he's very fascinated in the way of the mind, how the mind works, and an interrogative fella, as well as Comrade Joyous, who is the acclaimed most handsome man in the world. I'm sure you'll get to see him and discern that for yourselves in the coming seconds. We have Comrade Slade as well, who I've had many debates with. Very also intellectual person. He has very, what's the word now? Very a flairful way of debate. And then the final member of our panel is a member that has his own podcast as well. So he is by and large our inspiration for the podcast. We could even say he's our mentor in this podcast. He is Comrade Ulungiselim Jenny, and we are very pleased to have him to speak on this platform. I'll just give a few seconds, few minutes for the comrades to share their thoughts on the matter, where they stand, and then from then on, we'll have a discourse debate on whether we agree on the topic. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Simpiwe Miaza. I introduced myself as an artist, a creative, and a very intellectually curious person. So all the spaces I'm very adept in and speaking on. I'll be serving as a moderator for this episode. I hope you all come to enjoy and join us in this journey of introspection. Comrade Khotso, over to you.
Greetings, comrades, greetings, YouTube at large. Before I begin, I just want to share with you guys a piece that I wrote before coming into this discussion. So, the piece that I wrote goes as follows. In the quiet moments between our daily struggles and triumphs, we often find ourselves confronting the very essence of who we are, men. Men who in particular have been traditionally molded by external expectations, a relentless pursuit of strength, success, and stoicism that leaves little room for vulnerability or introspection. Yet beneath these layers lies a profound depth, the capacity for empathy, the hunger for truth, and the willingness to question not only the world around us, but the beliefs that we once hold sacred. Now, historically, manhood has often been associated with physical strength, stoicism, and leadership, just to narrow it down. But however, today I'm urging us or encouraging us to introspect on whether this type of manhood is well suited for the modern day world that we are living in right now. As our society is in a steadily decline and in a rapid destruction. So, hence, I'm taking the stance that the root problem or the root cause of the decline in society is due to the quality of men within that particular society. That's my piece.
That's a lovely piece, comrade. We really appreciate your time in having wrote that, and that's a very profound line of thought. Very interested and looking forward to getting into it. Next, we have on the panel Comrade Joyous. May you please introduce where you stand on the matter?
Welcome to Everyone, welcome to YouTube, social media, South Africa, world, China, where Khotso is at. Um, First and foremost, when Simpio was giving us the prompt for today's discussion, he said the quality of society is determined by the quality of the men found within that society. Now, not to seem redundant, but the quality of society is determined by the quality of society. And men form part of that society. So we should not draw a distinction between the man and the society. The man is part of the society. Women also form part of that society. So it is our responsibility, it's a collective responsibility to ensure that the quality of society is as high as possible. So we all have a collective responsibility. We are all equal in that sense, that we all share this responsibility to ensure that society is of a high quality. Now, within this society, we all have different roles. That's what a society means. Society is a collection of people where different people serve different roles. And today we are going to be looking at the role of the man. And as Comrade Khotso was alluding to, the man has often been attributed these fixed attributes, physical strength, protection, and providing. Um, so I feel that for society, I want to refine what Comrade Simpiwe gave us, the prompt that Comrade Simpiwe gave us, is to say that the quality of a society is predicated on men willing to assume their roles within that society. And we are going to discuss, I want to spoil the rest of the debate, but we are going to be discussing what it is that is the role of the man within the society. And yeah, that's my introduction. Thank you.
No, thank you, Comrade Joyous, for that introduction. It's a very controversial perspective from the get-go, already refining my prompt. But yeah, we're definitely looking forward to it. Is society determined by society? That's one to think about. We'll get into it. For now, I'd love to hear what Comrade Slade has to say on the matter. Please introduce your standpoint on this perspective.
Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm Slade. So my stand, similar to what the two have already said. I think the prompt you gave us is the quality of a society determined by the quality of men. Firstly, the quality of men itself. We have to first answer that question. What exactly do you mean? As Comrade Hossa said, in the past it was about physical strength and all that. But then as things change in the in the current modern society, instead of physical, we can now say providing for the family, things like that, as Sitwele or Joyous said. So the short answer is yes. I will say yes. The quality of a society is determined by the quality of men, because men contribute the most to the society itself. So yes, thanks. That's all from me.
Thank you very much, Comrade. No, we're coming with all the controversial takes. He says Comrade Slade is on is for the argument that a quality of a society is determined by the quality of the men within that society. And he says that it's the man that contributes most to the society, which I'm sure the comrades would love to tackle. But for now, we introduce our final member on the panel, Comrade Lungisile Mchweni.
All right. Evening, everyone. I hope everyone's well. Good I first want to give a huge shout out to Simpiri. I think what you have begun here is something that we need as a society. I'm not gonna lie, we need this as a society, just to sit down as men to discuss such issues. It really, really is beneficial to the society that we are living in. I think the question you asking, if I were to paraphrase it, and if I'm hearing it correctly, is there a direct relationship between the type of men we have in the society and the functionality of the society itself? That's at least what I'm hearing. And I think yes, there is. I think yes, there is. But I do want to agree with the comrades in saying that I think the question in and of itself is quite ambiguous, because what exactly are we measuring in, the attributes that make up a society? I think having to seek the expansion of the society amongst men, it's impossible, because we aren't capacitated to expand, society, particularly as in the human population. But if we're looking at into, advancing technology, if we're looking into advancing the economy, as controversial as it is, I think I do agree with Slade that men play a vital role in the advancement, particularly in areas we are capable, of doing, and even some areas which I think we share, or we ladies can as well do the same thing. But I think most, if not all of the time, men tend to outshine ladies in areas where we seem to be both capacitated to do those specific tasks. But to answer your question, yes. However, like I have mentioned earlier, there are some, variables and some things that we need to look into, because we aren't capacitated to enter into all spheres of what makes up the society.
Okay, thank you for all your stances, comrades, and I hear you. As comrade, the comrades have said, it occurs to me, it seems to me that we all have some sort of a concurrence in this argument, and I'll give a brief description of where I stand. I think it is fundamental to ask, what is the quality of a man, in this society? Because as Comrade Khozo alluded to, back then it was determined by how stoic you are, how masculine you are. The features now of a man are different than what they were required to be a few centuries ago. So I think it'll do us justice to first understand, what do we mean by a man in this current day and age, and then we can discuss the roles as Comrade Joy has prompted us to. But yeah, I think that's a good place to start. That's definitely a good place to start. I'll give it back to Comrade Khozo, and if any of you have thoughts, I'd appreciate you raising your hand. I'll just keep count of the minutes and however long it takes. But please feel free to share your thoughts. For now, Comrade Khozo.
I think the best indicator that we can use to measure the quality of men or of a man is by the progressive impact he has within society, whether it can be in a small sample space, such as just a family setting whereby there's a mother, there's a wife, there's a kid, how that kid or that child turns out to be surely should reflect the quality of who the father in that household was. And then the quality or how that child turns out into society will also be a determining factor of what kind of society that will be. So in essence, I'm basically saying that charity begins at home, community starts at home, and then if you are a man and you are fulfilling your duty as a father figure and you're playing that role how it's supposed to be played within that society, you are basically introducing an individual that will carry on those teachings, that will carry on those principles and those values that you are in a sense aiding to society. So yeah, that's basically my stance on the matter, to say the amount of impact you are contributing as a man in terms of progress within society, that determines the quality of the kind of man you are. Because the kind of impact you can have, it can be both ways. You can have a traumatic effect that will then result in your child having a ripple effect, and also, making others a victim of what he has succumbed to. So it goes both ways, whereby I'm saying that how you raise the next generation of men and women as a man within society, it's what determines the quality of man you are.
No, I hear you, comrade. I have my own thoughts on that, but before we get to them, comrade Joyous raised his hand, so uh you have the platform, comrade.
Yeah, I find myself, I think Khotso has opened the first line of discussion, which is he honed in on the family aspect, in particular the parental aspect. We shall touch on the marriage aspect later because that's a collusion of two different people from different backgrounds, but he touched on something very important, a huge indicator, and one that we tend to ignore is how a child turns out, because we must understand that during a child's developmental stages, that's when the parents play the largest role, because we tend to think that um, during the developmental stages, children only develop biological mechanisms to survive, like walking, how to eat, how to be, all this stuff. But you find that during the developmental stages is also the development of the conscious, and the conscious is how the child thinks, and a mistake that we make, or I feel that is made by parents, in particularly fathers, who are often seen as these people who reinforce what is right and wrong. We tell children what to think. We don't tell them how to think. And you find that the biggest problem that stems from that is that when you tell a child what to think, they don't know what it is. They cannot formulate thoughts for themselves. Kufana nokuthi, if a child touches a stove and you beat them, say no, you are just beating them for touching the stove. You are not telling them why they shouldn't touch the stove. You're not telling them the inherent danger of touching that stove, which is that they will get burned. And you run the risk of, once they have formulated these cognitive faculties, once they're able to think for themselves, they'll ask, Mara, why should I touch the stove? And this does not directly translate to the stove example. It directly translates to many issues that they encounter in their lives, like when they meet women, how do they treat women, how do they many things. And you find that parents, particularly fathers, we do not teach young men or baby boys, because they are the future men of that society, how to think. We tell them what it is. We say, hey, indoda kumele iqine, indoda kumele ibe so, indoda kumele ibe so. We don't tell them why must that happen. And another thing before I conclude is that how we can have a generation of men that are raised by men, they're raised by women. So I think that's the perfect segue to the next speaker. Yeah.
No, it's a perfect segue indeed, and I'll give it over to him, and then I'd like to share my thoughts. It's a perfect segue indeed. Comrade Ulungisile.
Okay, thank you. Comrade Joyous. By the way, we also call him Jobe, for those of you who don't know. Jobe opened a can of worms, and I think I just want to tackle the whole, I guess, narrative that Comrade Khoto and Jobe are talking about. Comrade Jobe are talking about Allow me to give an example of a story I heard on the radio of these two gentlemen who were identical twins who grew up with a father who was a drunkard. And when in their growing up, they have different outcomes in terms of, their relationship to alcohol. One, detests alcohol. He does not want to see alcohol in his face. And the other is an alcoholic, just like his dad. And what's interesting is when you ask these gentlemen, when you ask the one who's an alcoholic, why are you an alcoholic? He says, because my dad was an alcoholic. And when you ask the one who's not an alcoholic, why are you not an alcoholic? He says, because my dad was an alcoholic. And I think it becomes very interesting there that can we really place the burden of the decisions of the children on the grooming of the parents? That's something I think needs to be explored, because I think it's just too much pressure on parents, and I'm not comfortable in having to ascribe the responsibility of the decision making of the next generation to the previous generation. Now, am I saying that we shouldn't pass on our knowledge, we shouldn't teach them how to think? No, though I am saying that it would be unfair of us to measure the quality of a society based on the decision making of the generation that follows, the fathers and all of that. So I think that's maybe one variable which I'm not comfortable in connecting it to the quality of the society. I do think, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to go ahead and mention what variable I think is very important. I honestly think that the biggest impact that or the biggest contributor to a society, from the perspective of a man, or it has to be how intentional the man is in becoming a better person. That for me is really the most vital part to work on to make the society better. And I think this is something that we don't talk about that much, especially because people are focusing on political issues but are having trouble fixing their own internal political issues themselves. They having their own struggles with porn addiction, and they're dealing with so many demons in them, and now they want to be fixing demons out there, but they're struggling with demons in here. And I do want to say it's easier to teach people, or to at least guide them, once you know how to deal with you. Okay, yeah, that's my, I guess that's my take on the whole issue.
No, Conrad, thank you for your take. And I hear you when you say it opens a whole kind of worms. As you were speaking, I was concluding Comrade Jobe's discussion, Comrade Khotso's also point, and I realized the nurturing of a man within a society, how a man is nurtured, is in particular a big factor into the variables that determine whether or not a society becomes a good one. So I'm curious on that. I'm very inclined now to believe that it's how a man is nurtured, not necessarily the quality of a man, but how a man is nurtured, which would by default attribute the nature of, or the quality of society to the quality of the woman within that society, how they nurture the men, how they raise the men, even the fathers, how they nurture their sons to grow up. Comrade Joyce mentioned how a father teaches their son that they must be strong, they must be relentless, they mustn't cry in front of people, but they don't mention why. And that to me shows the negligence of nurture. So I'm curious on that, and I'll give it over to Comrade Slade, and then Comrade Lungisile will follow. Comrade Slade, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'll start with Khoto and Reyes. Okay, they were talking about like when you are raising a kid, I will say legacy. Okay, let me just summarize it as legacy. Or the parents, they teach the child whatever they know and whatever. But then the thing is, okay, let me just give South Africa as an example. We have many socio-economic problems, for one, which is maybe the biggest contributing factor in all of like maybe gender-based violence, if I can say. So now in a household where the kids are growing up in such places, how do you now then work backwards to now teach the next generation how to behave, how to do all that when, what can I say? Like there's no way to move forward without fixing the economy first. But then in order to fix the economy, as you said, you have to have a high quality of men. But then how do you now then create high quality men when the society or the economy is already like this? Yeah, that's just my take from what I have heard. Thanks.
No, I hear the paradox, Comrade. I definitely do. Comrade Lungisile, maybe this is what you wanted to address. I'll give it over to you.
Yes, I actually think I wanted to move from what you were saying, the question you posed, and I might be paraphrasing, which is it even possible to be having, mothers, or women nurture man? Yeah, you were questioning the whole nurturing. I actually want to make a comment on that, and I think it will tie well in with what Comrade Slade was talking about. But personally, I honestly do think that there are some areas that women should not be nurturing men at all. The very same way men can't tell women how to give birth. It's they are intrinsic attributes of being a man that can only be understood once you are a man. And I think with that being said, there is a yeah, man, a call for men to men. Yeah. I don't think this specific intrinsic attribute can be taught, you know. I think it's just a matter of maturing to it. This might be controversial, but yeah, it's maturing to it. Like that's the case. And I think it ties in well with the question, which is, but then how do we fix a society that's messed up? I think the only way, at least from where I'm standing, is to call upon that which intrinsically exists already, And I think, yeah, that is at least how I see progress, which is man maturing up to manhood. Yeah, which I'm not sure it can be taught. That's I don't know. Maybe I'm controversial, maybe I'm wrong, but at least that's what I think.
And no, I hear you, Comrade. I have my own thoughts on what you just said, but before we get to them, I'd love to give Comrade Joyous a chance, and I noticed he raised his hand.
Now, the thing is, Juice, I was about to speak, but you said something extremely controversial at the end, which is that there's something intrinsic about being a man. So there's something encoded in men that you cannot be taught, which is something that's very controversial because I wanted to approach it from the question that Slade asked, which is, if the economy is messed up, how do we, this paradox between the quality of the economy and the quality of the man. And now I'm going to get political and I'm going to be controversial. Yeah, but I feel like a big reason why the world is as it is right now, and this paradox does exist, is because of the economy. And when I say the economy, I'm talking particularly about the economic system, infamous economic system, which is capitalism. Capitalism, before we go into the other things, before capitalism, we can go to traditional African tribes. We can go to, I'm not really sure about European communities, but before capitalism, it was all about this sense of community. It was all about, it's the whole analogy of you founded yourself within a community and you contributed to this community because being in this community ensured your survival and it ensured your well-being. So we had this sense of community that I am part of society. I am part of society. This society that exists, I am part of it. And then capitalism is introduced. And capitalism says, no, it's no longer about society. It's about what you provide. And then you go back and and it becomes an issue because now you create a society that is focused on the self and the individual to say, what can you provide? What can you provide? And it becomes a big issue. It becomes a very, very big issue because now that trickles down to men being the active part or used to be the active part of the economy. So this trickled down to the mindset of men to say that no, 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 a man's value is attached to what he can provide. He can provide for society. And this becomes a huge issue. It becomes a huge issue because now it's no longer about the communal sense. It's about if your value is tied down to what you provide, it creates a society of narcissistic men, because men being the active part of the economy. So long story short, capitalism is the issue. Socialism is the way.
No, comrade, I hear you. It sounds like you are combating, in a sense, what Comrade Khotso mentioned when he said the best indicator of a good quality man is the progressive impact he has on society. Like, I'm not sure if you're contesting whether or not capitalism is the root of this problem, and you're with Comrade Khotso in saying now we live in a society where the best indicator is the individual impact he has on society, or you're contesting it all over. But before you give your clarifications, I'll give Comrade Khotso first since he hasn't had an opportunity to speak on this. And then I noticed Comrade Lungisile also raised his hand. So Comrade Khotso, over to you.
I just want to go back to what Comrade Ulungisile, or the comment he made about the two or the twins that had an alcoholic father, and one turned out to be alcoholic and the other detested alcohol, and that being his case, that we shouldn't put the burden on being a parent or the parental guidance that was given. But let's take countries, for example, as a home or as a household. Different countries as different households. This kind of behavior can even be narrowed down to an individual household. We have countries like Norway, for example, where they have low crime rates. They have the lowest uh, accounted murders or accounted, rapes in their country, and we can attribute that to the kind of leadership that the Norwegian government has. And then we take a country such as South Africa, for example, where we have an incompetent government and that's doing absolutely nothing to sort out the socio-economic people of its country. And then we see that in that kind of environment, we have large or a high level of crime rate, a high level of rape cases, teenage pregnancies, and all those things. So what I'm basically getting with this is that the outlook of society or how that society functions is also attributed to the kind of leadership provided by those who are in power. The same way I'm saying that the kind of child that will be, presented to a particular society or that will be an active participant in a society is mostly attributed to the kind of parenting or the kind of guidance that was brought forth towards that child. And another part I want to say is that I just want to go back to what Comrade Joyce said about capitalism being the root cause of everything. I tend to believe that, and if we are going to say that an indicator of how or that determines the quality of a man is it's in his pursuit to be a better individual, then we are basically in line with what capitalism promotes, because capitalism says that in order to better yourself you have to have money, in order to better yourself you have to have power. And that's what we are seeing with the generation of men that we are currently a part of, whereby we believe that the only way we can have presence in this life is our ability to provide, is our ability to acquire that ascension, which is getting to success, being a rich individual, being an individual that can take care of himself and those around him.
No, I hear you, Conrad. Thank you for your thoughts. I'm hearing a lot of contesting against the individualist society that we live in. I think it's a byproduct of capitalism, as you and Comrade Hot and Comrade Joyous mentioned, that now we have a narcissistic perspective towards society where we're goal driven inwards towards ourselves. How can I become this person? How can I achieve this for the people around me? It's no longer a communal thing. I have my thoughts on that, but before we get to them, I noticed Comrade Ulungisile raised his hand previously. So this is just to give him an opportunity to speak. Please have the platform, Comrade.
Ladies and gentlemen, those who are listening for the very first time, I think people who are around my circle know me very well. I like Comrade Jobe. I like him too much. But today I disagree with him. Today we are not seeing eye to eye. As well as Khoto. I think I'm a capitalist. I think socialism. Yeah, I know. All right, you guys are not seeing it, but you should see their faces. They're so disappointed in me. But I think I am a capitalist. I think Jobe made so harsh claims relating to capitalism, which I tend to disagree with them. He said people who are capitalistic are very narcissistic. And he said we are living in a society where, you are judged in relation to the level of value you can bring within the society. I just might get theological here. I really just might get theological for a minute. When you check the design of a man, the man was created to produce value. Man was designed to produce value, and if man is stagnant, he slowly moves to disaster. It doesn't take much for you to go into a horrific state. Like you just have to be stagnant and not do anything. But to actually make an impact, you actually have to give value to the society. For the mere fact that we are having this conversation right now, we are attempting to give some form of value to the society. That's something I want you to take note. We are aiming to bring some form of enlightenment, some form of, you know, empowering to the individuals. Now, I don't think it's narcissistic to look at yourself for someone else. You know, I don't think it's narcissistic to take, the term I'm looking for is identity capital, to check your inventory. What are your strengths? What are the places, you know, you are able to help other people? Like I've done identity capital, and I've realized I'm an individual who is quite well spoken, and because of that, now I know how best to serve society. And I don't think it makes me narcissistic to take some time to look into myself and be like, all right, cool, this is me. Now, I do think that, you know, socialism can create some form of codependency to a point where some people don't even add the work of looking into themselves and actually thinking to themselves, how can I give value to, you know, the society at large? And gentlemen, maybe I'm not understanding the definition of capitalism, but from where I'm standing, you guys are defining capitalism as, you know, being like, from, I'm hearing you guys saying capitalism is essentially a system that values people, you know, on the amount of value they can give to the society. If that's the definition of capitalism, if we constrain it to that, then I think I disagree with you guys in saying capitalism is quite harsh. That's the first thing I want to mention. The second thing I want to mention is, as one of the conversations we had prior to beginning this meeting is, there are so many variables that make up a society, that make up, you know, statistics, and hence Hoto's claim, you know, of referencing, you know, Norway and all of that. It's very challenging for me to see how leadership can be presented in a formula. Yo, I'm being told to wrap up. Yeah, I'm seeing it as a challenge how to present leadership in a formula, like do this and this will happen, given the context that, you know, we have. There's apartheid and there's all of that, and there's different context that exists. So the variable thing really blows my mind, and hence this is why I always advocate for inward to outward help. Thank you.
No, comrade, I hear you, and I think you've clarified your position that you're against, and you touched on it theologically speaking, and I had my own perspective on it theologically speaking. I'd love to share it, but before we get to that, Comrade Slade, you raised your hand. I saw with urgency as well. Comrade Joy has also raised his hand, so I'll give the comrades a chance to speak. Comrade Slade, over to you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I see now we have entered into politics now. We're politicking. So I will also talk about the matter of capitalism and socialism and all that. I think that the current society, like whatever level that society or economy is already at, is what determines which system is better for them. Like when you're talking about socialism now, if we're living in a rich society where there's already an abundance of money, the government, like, it's fine, everything is fine, then it's a system that can work, because we don't really need that much from the people. So then even the other one, the capitalism, the one you talk about, it's also a system that could work. But then when we're talking about a society where the quality of the economy is already low, if we are now going to say like everyone has to bring something to the table of value, but then if most people, they're already poor, it's now a competition It's demand, this supply and demand, or yeah, and also the leadership comment from Hall. So I also agree that the leadership overall is what determines the quality of society and men. Because that's all. Thanks.
No, comrade, I hear you. I notice you're very big on legacy, and you mentioned just on your final thoughts that leadership is a very integral part of society. I think I'm inclined to agree with you when you say there's an a demand of this type of system of a particular society for it to be able to work. Comrade Joyous, I'll hand it over to you. I noticed you have very hot take, so I'll just hand it over to you.
Yeah, Simpiwe, when I'm done, please say what you've been thinking about this. But yeah, the reason why I agree with what Juice is saying, Juice, we agree. The issue comes in the line of thinking that capitalism introduces. In a capitalistic society, it's what can I do? Ne? In a society that places value on the community, it's how can we help each other? So now everything is about the individual. And that creates a very big issue when everything is about the individual. Because in relation to what we're talking about, I'll make an example in relation to what we're talking about, which is the first point that was raised, which is with regards to the parenting. This way of thinking has trickled down even to the parenting, because now you find parents having children and their first thoughts is, I don't want my child to have the life I had. I want my child to live a better life than me. That becomes an issue because now you are not treating that child as an individual. You are just projecting your inner conflicts, which is, me now, my father wasn't there, so I'll be there for my child. If that's the reason why you're there for your child, it creates an issue because you have this narcissistic hold and you are basically uh, trying to raise yourself, whereas you are supposed to be raising a completely different human being to you, completely different. So that's why I say capitalism has introduced this narcissistic way of thinking, where it's like even in the schooling system, even the schooling system, we receive participation awards. People say, doesn't matter what happened. Also, doesn't matter what happened, as long as you tried your best. When it's all about you, as long as you tried your best, that's all that matters. And from a young age, you are taught me, 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 me. It's no longer about the society, and it's all about transactions. You become sort of like a monetary piece. A monetary piece, you become an object, you're objectified. Whereas in a community-based system, it's about how can we help each other reach this goal, which is in the context of this discussion, how can we make society better? Which is where I said we introduce this thing of roles. Then we can start talking about how can I play a role in making the society better? How can we help each other in making society, not about what can I do, it's all about me. So yeah.
No, comrade, you've made some very compelling arguments over there that the roles in particular are very paramount to whether or not a society progresses. People understanding their roles within society. It's how a system works. You can't have a system where nobody knows where their roles are. We're all competing for equality. It doesn't make sense considering we're all born with different traits and abilities. So I hear you on that. And you asked what my thoughts are or what they have been so far. I think I borrow or adopt all of y'all's thoughts. I'm very much inclined to agree with all of y'all. But I noticed Comrade Ulungisile was about to mention a theological perspective. And That's sort of the route I'm taking with it. So we live in a value hierarchy. The postmodernists call it that. The postmodernists is a school of philosophy, for those who don't know, a school or a line of people that think that we've passed the Enlightenment era. The Enlightenment was the era of science where Abu Einstein, Abu law of general relativity, all of those things. 1950s, if I'm not mistaken. So the postmodernists say, which I very much agree with, we live in a value hierarchy. And this value hierarchy has a pinnacle towards it. So a hierarchy works with a system of from the bottom to the top. Now, what is this pinnacle? I think that's very, very essential to the conversation we're having. It's important that you understand what this pinnacle is. And if the whole society orients itself towards this pinnacle, I think we can find a very successful society. I'll mention how countries like China, countries like America have developed to the place where they are. Although there are some sociologic, whatever that word is, how they've digressed in, although there's nuances in that regard, but there is a system of hierarchy which they understand. For China example, which is according to them a communist state, not necessarily a true communist state, but it's a state where the government or the, I'm going to use the word emperor for to make it simpler to understand. There's an emperor, right? And there are people within that society that work in their integral roles, as Comrade Joyce alluded to. These people have to function according to their roles, and these roles are ascribed to them by their nature. So if I'm born naturally able to perform well in maths, that is what I'm inclined and encouraged to do. So all of these people, right, they work together as a body. And for this body to work, it needs a pinnacle, it needs a head to direct it. This, if everyone within this system is oriented towards a pinnacle, then it will be a state that progresses, that has forward development. I think I was about to mention that I'm gonna introduce a theological perspective. I think God and our understanding of God, what it means to follow God, what it means to be religious. I think we've lost that. And that for me is what determines the nature of society, the God within that society. I mentioned earlier on that we live in a value hierarchy. So currently what we placed at the most high is ourselves, as Comrade Joyce and Comrade Khodzo, as well as the other comrades mentioned. The individual is very emphasized in the society we live in. So it's all about what can I do? What can I do for me? What can I do now? There's even a hedonistic lifestyle of I want to get pleasure now. How can I smash that baddie over there? So and so and so. It's all about me. And it it's exactly why this society can never work as an integral body. It can't. It can't if we have a pinnacle that is individual. We can't all orient ourselves towards every individual. We need God. That's my take on it. I noticed Comrade Lungisile picked up his hand. I'm sure the comrades are gonna have some thoughts on this. Let me hand it over to y'all.
Yeah, I'm not objecting. Okay, I first want to start by saying, all right, Jobe, I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. And I think what you're essentially saying is you're talking about focusing on yourself from an egotistical way. In that sense, I hear you. You're fine. I just wanted to say that. All right, cool. But I wanted to go to your claim, Mieza, Comrade Mieza. how exactly well, let me put it this way. How practical is it to add God to society? I think when we talk about God, even in theological circles, be it churches, be it even in conversations, I think a lot of people in apologetics, I could say, is included here as well. We talk about God from a very theoretical point of view and never in a practical sense. And so I just wanted to know from your perspective, how can we, and this will sound very weird, but how can we practicalize God in a way in a way that could help us move to a better society? Because you said the standard of moving towards a better society is God, but how can we practicalize God, to enable us to a better society?
Excuse me for that, comrade. That's a very good question. Thank you for the question. My take on it, right, is I mentioned a bit that how the establishment of the countries that are currently developed by world standards are countries like the USA. So in their constitution, the founding fathers, they included a very religious perspective of how they want to constitute or how they want to create their constitution. Their first and I think up to fourth amendments are very religiously or biblically inspired. So things like free will and so on and so forth, they're rooted within a transcendental value hierarchy. So a value hierarchy that isn't limited to the human, but to an ideal, a transcendence that we can all orient ourselves towards. I think you asked how practical is it to incorporate this within society. If we can take the route that the founding fathers took, which I think is a very successful route because look where they are now. If we can take that route, and Comrade Joyce is disagreeing, but let me finish the thought. If we can take that route, right, and include a sense of theology, a sense of theology within our constitution. Of course, this has to be understood because theology is also a very nuanced topic. I don't even think Christians themselves understand what they mean when they refer to God. So that's how nuanced it gets. But if we can have those sort of discussions and introduce that to our constitution, the heart of the matter that I'm trying to address here is we need to orient ourselves according to a pinnacle that is transcendent to all of us. That it's not about me, it's not about you. It surpasses me and you. We need to have that orientation. If we can all orient ourselves that way, then the familial structures, the government structures, the corporate structures, they'll all have that sense of oneness, that sense of community. I'll hand it over to Comrade Joyous. I noticed Comrade Khotso also raised his hand. But yeah, that's my take. Comrade Ulingisilo will follow afterwards. Thank you.
No, I think Khotso raised his hand first. So also raise his hand first.
No problem. Comrade Khotso, it's yours.
Okay, I just wanted to say that when putting God at the pinnacle, it comes with problems, or it comes with its own, issues, such as we are not living in an entirely religious world, or we are not living in a world where we all follow one religion. Different religions have their own perspectives, and even if you are not part of any religion, you can still not believe in a God of for some sort. So before the idea of God being brought up as the pinnacle, what makes sense for me is at the pinnacle of size of society being the idea that we are here to serve one another and not to serve mainly ourselves. That I think is what should be at the pinnacle. And let me just go back to the first point I made about what makes a quality father or a quality man is the amount of progress that he adds to society. I wasn't talking about it in a capitalistic sense, in the sense that, raising your child to be a doctor or to be an engineer so that they can also be an active participant in the economy. But the aspect that I was coming from is, once, let's say, for example, you are a father and you're given the responsibility of raising a boy. I believe that the best teachings, or the teachings that will ensure progress within society, is teaching that boy how to, fulfill his duty as a man in terms of providing security, providing protection, providing that sense of comfort to his family. So basically teaching him ways for him to stand up and support himself in that sense. And also just the spirit of Ubuntu, the spirit of humanity, and saying that if I am working at a farm, or if I am a mine worker, or if I am an engineer, I'm mainly becoming an engineer just because I wanna bring innovation to the world. I wanna bring food to, people's tables, not necessarily for only my betterment. And I think that's what is lacking within our society. But before we can even think about saving others, the problem is that who's raising the next generation of men who are supposed to serve? And we can see that the caliber of those men that are given the responsibility of raising men, they them they themselves come from a long lineage of struggling with the same issues, struggling with the same traumas, struggling with the same difficulties. So it then becomes difficult for an alcoholic father to give birth to somebody who's gonna have a progressive or a good impact within society. So I think that's where my major argument stems.
No, I hear you, comrade. I definitely hear you. I'll give it over to Comrade Joyous with urgency because I noticed our time for the episode is almost at an end. Comrade Joyous, your platform is yours.
Now, Khozo said it beautifully. It's very impractical, as you said, Scipio yourself, that um, even theological people don't know what you mean by God. There exist many gods. There exist many gods. If money is at the pinnacle of this hierarchy, money is your God, by definition. And another thing you said America, since it based its constitution on theological um, aspects, look where it is now. What do you mean? America's a horrible place, bro. What do you mean? But okay, I digress. What I wanted to say is, yes, I agree with Otto. He took the words out of my mouth. I agree with him. I agree with him completely. But then the question I want to ask now for the rest of the episode is, Olungsid has provided an answer for this question where he said, it has been encoded into us from birth. So I want to know who defines, because that's where the divide comes now. That's where the biggest divide comes. Forget the racial divides, forget the political divides, forget the fact that there's literally 8 billion people on this planet. How are we going to agree on one thing? But I feel that the biggest issue comes where who defines the roles of a man? Who defines those roles? And that's the Lungsile answered it. He said it's encoded in us. No one defines it. It's in us. It's intrinsic. But there existing many definitions of what a man should be on this planet makes me skeptical of that. So I want to ask the comrades whether they agree with Lungsile or they saying who should define what a man should be and what a man should do. And who should be allowed to define that? That's another question. Who should be allowed to make that definition? Or is it a definition? Because it's clearly a definition we all can come to a single conclusion to it. We can't come to that conclusion. So who defines it, and who should be allowed to define it? And is it definable, or should we just strip these concepts of men and women and say we're all human? Yeah, that's the question.
Thank you for the question, comrade. I'll afford everyone on the panel a chance to answer the question. Who defines what a man is? Is it intrinsic that we all know? But before we get to that, Comrade Ulungisile has some thoughts, and then I noticed just previously Comrade Slade was about to answer that Comrade Joya's question. Comrade Ulungisile, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was actually hoping when Job raised his hand, I saw he raised his hand at a point where you were talking about the fathers being the individuals who uh, created, I guess, governance, having carried a revelation of the deity, God. It was interesting. Khozo rejected the notion that God can't necessarily, quote unquote, help us. And okay, I read up on him, but I don't think I understand fully what's happening. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. And it's weird because I'm the one who studied philosophy. But there's a gentleman known as Friedrich Nietzsche who speaks of the death of God. There's a gentleman known as Friedrich Nietzsche who speaks of the death of God, and it is believed, if I am right, Friedrich Nietzsche is actually one of the people who forms the modernist, which Simpiwe spoke about earlier on. But Friedrich Nietzsche speaks of a society killing God, and apparently the era where God was killed, it was one of the bloodiest eras ever. And when Friedrich Nietzsche was talking about the death of God, he wasn't necessarily talking about an active killing of God, like we have this knife and we stabbing God, and but it was just the negligence or the turning away from the standard that which God proclaims. And I'm not sure, this is to go to Job's statement, I'm not sure if it is safe to hand over the responsibility of definitions to an individual. But what I am sure of is our best bet of effective definitions, it has to be, you know, it has to be grounded in the existence of God. And this is why I think I go with Simpiwe on this one. In fact, one of the arguments that they lay out in apologetics for the existence of God is, if there is no God, then we have no grounding of morals. Like morals no longer become, I guess, objective. We can't hold people to a specific standard, because then anyone can do whatever they want. So I'm not sure if and to be honest with you, this is a very tricky topic. We can talk about it at some other point, but apartheid comes as a result of white people thinking that they carry so much God that he literally gives them the definition. Now, what makes it extra controversial, which might be a topic for another day, it really bothers me as a theologian myself. It's the fact that apartheid is actually a pattern that actually happens as a pattern. I see the pattern of apartheid in Exodus. Oh, no, not Exodus, Deuteronomy. Oh, yeah. When the Israelites left the land and they were coming into, the promised land, God tells them, take over. And for me, that's just like, hey, but that sounds like apartheid. But anyways, that's a topic for another day. But nevertheless, I think point still remains that if we have a chance of surviving in an economy, it has to be where we put God, amongst or on the highest point of the hierarchy. Yeah.
No, I hear you, comrade, and I notice a pattern with our conversations. The more we get closer to the end, the more a can of worms is open and we want to go into different topics. I've picked up that there's a theological aspect of a topic where we question exactly what God is. Carmen Khoto mentioned that it can't work because of the different religions, so on and so forth. But I think it would be for the best to give this discussion a episode of its own. For now, I hand it over to Comrade Slade to answer Comrade Joyce's question of who defines a man. Comrade Slade, the platform is yours.
Thanks, comrade. Before I answer the question, I wanted to get back to your topic about God, because I'll start off by saying it's too abstract to be applied to a modern society, to especially a modern society, where there's, for example, access of information. You might be able to apply that within you, maybe in a small community. Let me just say in a small community. But then with how quickly information spreads, you can't really keep that exact picture throughout, like outside. Let's say you're applying that concept to South Africa. We have access to information outside of South Africa, so you can't really maintain that kind of concept or abstract concept that you must follow this code, this and this and this and this. And to answer the question about what defines a man, I think you already answered yourselves when you said how you are raised. So it's just nature. And yeah, that's just what I think. I'll pass it on to Hotzo next. I'm done.
To the question of how or who's supposed to define what a man is, I think how it has always been defined. Men defined what manhood is. You can look at it from a cultural perspective, you can look at it from a religious perspective, but men have always taken the responsibility to define what manhood is according to them, which can be attributed to the nature that was revealed to them or just the societal construct, which is why I wanted us to have this discussion today, because I feel like the traditional definition of what manhood is, and must be strong, must provide, all those things are a bit outdated for a postmodern society. So hence I'm encouraging us to introspect and try and fight with this definition to say, after this conversation has been had, what can we then go out of this and say, this is what I will define myself as a man who is an active member of the community that he finds himself in. So I can't really define what a man is, but I'm hoping to at least get closer to that definition, if it makes sense.
No, thank you, comrade. Thank you, comrade, for that. Comrade Joyous, you raised your hand. I think I have an answer to Comrade Khoto, but I'll give it to Comrade Joyous first.
Now, I think Juice raised his hand first, so give it to Juice.
Yes. Okay. I first want to just comment on what Slade was saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I heard you properly, you mentioned how, and allow me to just also, if I heard you wrong, allow me to correct that wrong version of the narrative you had. You said um, because of the constant access we have to knowledge, it seems quite absurd, I guess, to um, stick to a definition, if that makes sense. But I think or it invalidates, the narrative of God is still necessary, for the the hierarchy as you spoke about. But before I continue, can I just ask, is did I get your position right?
Okay, I meant it in a way such like, okay, how can I put this? Like if you are looking at a society, at the current society now, if you want to define a society based on God, it would have to be like very isolated. Like as long as there are people who have access to information outside of South Africa, then you cannot maintain the image of whatever you are selling, that this is God and this and this and this. Like it's, yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay, cool. And I guess this goes exactly to what I was saying, which is I'm not sure if we can come up with, strict definitions per se, but I can say that our best bet of coming up with definitions is God, because at least from how I understand God is that because he is independent, this means that when we fix ourselves, we are actually meeting God. So it's a thing of he's an independent individual and he's not dependent on us. It's not the information that we have of him here that makes him him. He's independent, and the more we live life and the more we move on, it's the more we figure him out. And this is why we can see now that the apartheid era, that was not God, but in that moment they thought it was God, but we can see now, given the access of information, that we actually get to meet God himself. I completely forgot what I was going to say to Khotso. Can you believe it? My goodness. Yo, okay, guys, I'm sorry. Let's continue. I hope I'll remember as we go along.
Comrade Joyous, it's unfortunate, Comrade Lungisile, but we'll give it to Comrade Joyous on now the concluding matter. I'm sorry, Comrade Joyous, but it's the concluding matter on maybe you have thoughts on how to answer Comrade Khotso's question on to satisfy him on how can we define a man, or what do we take from this conversation? What is the correlation between a man and society? I don't know if you had your previous thoughts before you get to that, but please conclude with that. Joyous.
Firstly, why I disagree with Khotso is this concept of fluidity, to say that I don't want to say I disagree. We agree in the sense that I believe that when you declare a universal being a statement that you believe is true being that you believe that it's beneficial. That's how we define true. When you say that this is how a man should be, when you declare that type of universal, you should not leave that universal unattended. You must constantly revise that universal, always keep on revising it. So I feel like we agree in that sense, but I disagree in the sense of this fluidity, to say that we can't really define it. We have to define it. We don't have a choice, because it's the whole analogy of the moral subjectivity that is existent, or that the postmodernists preach, and why I'm against postmodernism. I'm against postmodernism, because postmodernism says, well, morality is up to you. What you define as morality, it's up to you. That is fine in theory. Oh, hey, this is my morality. This is your morality. Let's moralitize. No, it's all fine in principle, but it becomes an issue. The whole analogy of when a robber comes to your home and says, "Hey, I want to steal all your stuff." You can't then say, well, your beliefs, my beliefs, I can't interfere with what you believe in. So you can take my stuff because it's what you believe in, right? That's the issue. It creates this society as we are going away from in the beginning, where it's all about the individual. And we all have to align ourselves to this. Now, what we align ourselves to, which is what I believe, and it's going to lead to another conversation, is what we align ourselves to is we must all, our safest bet, you said our safest bet is God. I say our safest bet is to drill the intention or to drill the knowledge in people from birth that how can we help each other, to drill this sense of community. How can we make society better as a collective? Now it's going to become an issue because what is a better society? That's another question. But I feel that that's our safest bet, because God, as also rightfully said, there's too many religions. Money can be my God. Money, if money is my God and Simpious God is the God of Christ, we will have different views and we will not be able to coerce or collude. So I feel like our safest bet before all we agree on God is that we must all agree that we must all be taught that it's about the collective, it's about the community. From a young age, it's about the community and what can I do that is in conjunction with it being about the community. And I feel like that's that's how we can get to a point whereby we can define what a man should do. So yeah.
No, I hear you, comrade. I definitely hear you. I'll give it back to Comrade Hot. So I agree with you. I must say I agree with you. But as you said, you've opened a whole different conversation again. I think a concluding point for all of us. I'll give this a bit more elaborated after Comrade Lungisile's thoughts. But it seems to me that we can all agree Ubuntu. Ubuntu is what determines the quality of a society, whether or not we have a communal orientation. I think that's a proper answer to conclude the episode. But before I do that, Comrade Lungisile, you had thoughts.
Yes. By the way, I would like to propose, if you guys can, just fix your budget and find the time to get the book "We Who Wrestle with God" by Jordan Peterson. I think he does justice in terms of explaining who God is. You know, he talks about, you know, he characterizes him as a spirit who calls people into sacrificial living, and he talks about aiming up. But anyways, that's a topic for another day. But I just wanted to bring this to the floor, just to go back to what Koto was saying, which I I I I want to say I disagree with him, but I might not be necessarily disagreeing, just as we've seen with what happened earlier between me and Jobe himself. It might be just a train of thought or the wording itself. And that is, I don't think we necessarily have to change the definitions or the expectations from man. You know, a man has to provide, a man has to protect. I just do think that the methodology itself has to change, you know. But and one of the things I think I had a problem with, and I think this ties in very well, is because of the traditional methodologies, I always had trouble having to figure out what type of father am I going to be to my own children. Because when I look at myself, I'm not the type of individual when we go to funerals, Obambe Kharaf, you know, who has the spade. No, I like, give me the mic. I'm right on the mic. Don't give me the thing, you know. And the thing is, that's me giving back to the society. It's just in a very different way as opposed to, you know, the common methodology within, you know, Ubuntu societies and all of that. So I think you know, and providing for my kids will mean I speak. I have to speak. I have to use my voice. I have to use my mind. That's a very different methodology as opposed to, you know, kharaf and all of that. However, I'm still within the framework of protecting. I don't think I'm capacitated to kill someone, you know, or have a gun. But I think I can take out money to hire a security company to do that for me, you know. So I think the methodology of doing, you know, yeah, the things that are required of men needs to be, you know, looked into. But the thing itself, I think it still needs to be maintained, you know. I think I really do think, you know, my wife should not be worried about getting a plumber. That's my job. Yo, that's another topic because now we're moving into gender roles. But yeah.
No, thank you very much for that, comrade. I'm glad you could recognize yourself that now we're moving into gender roles. But unfortunately, we have to conclude this episode, comrades. I think a proper tie-in to everyone's points. I've been jotting down notes for what everyone is saying. And Comrade Joyous, I'll attend your hand just now, but we're concluding now, comrade. So what I hear from Comrade Slade's proposal of there needs to be a legacy, a leadership within the progression of a man's growth. There needs to be a sense of giving back to the community, as Comrade Ulungisile just said, as well as what Comrade Khoto and what Comrade Joyce was talking about, in how these roles, they all give back to the society in different manners. It's not necessarily that a man gives back to the society and that is what makes the society. It's that the society is made by all of us fulfilling the roles that we're assigned. So I hear that all. And I think a place where we can all agree is Ubuntu is very necessary. The spirit of Ubuntu is what society should be predicated upon. That we all have a communal orientation, that we all fixate ourselves to how can I serve my neighbor? How can I love my neighbor? What does it mean to love my neighbor? Obviously, you can't love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. What does that mean to love yourself? So Ubuntu is fundamental. That I think we can all agree. And I think it's a beautiful place to conclude the episode. Comrade Joyous, just before I close off, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, I want to say something real quick. To the one person watching this, shout out to you. And to my future self watching this, shout out to you. But I wanted to say that today we focus mainly on being a man from how men are raised perspective. So I want to promise that one person watching that we're gonna come up with a second part to this, whereby we talk about men in relation to the other gender, that other gender. It was Valentine's Day. I'm wearing red. So next episode we're gonna be talking about men in relation to women. And yeah, I'm promising you a part two. Part two is coming. That one, even the bots. Shout out to the bots also that are watching this. Yeah, everyone. Shout out to them. Away.
Nah, shout out, comrade. Definitely shout out to the bots as well. I think we would be doing an injustice if we ended it here because there's many routes that we've digressed into. A theological perspective, Comrade Slade mentioned that it's too abstract to include God in this modern society. Comrade Khotso mentioned the nuance of the many religions. Comrade Lungisile mentioned how the definitions, our best bet to define a man needs to be rooted with God. So this theological perspective is very emphasized in this talk. I think that's also another route we need to explore, but definitely we're going to be doing that as well. Thank you very much, comrades, for being on the panel tonight. It's the first of many, many, and we appreciate you all for tuning in. Those who even made it to this point of the episode, shout out to you for real. Comrades, please give your please give your salutes, your goodbyes to the audience.
Okay, I think I will begin. Uh, yeah, as they have greeted the bots and the one individual who will be there in the future self, I just like to say to the listeners that allow us room to grow. Just because we said what we said today, it doesn't necessarily mean we will say the very same thing tomorrow. We might change our perspective, and just know that whatever we are doing it to find the best narrative that not only helps us but helps you as well. And so, if you were to judge us in anything we do, judge us by the intent of wanting a better community. You know, so we might have not gotten it right on this episode, we might have not gotten it right in some of the things we said, but our intent genuinely is for us to strive for a better society, as we have alluded that Ubuntu is at the heart of what we, are talking about. And yeah, so peace, y'all from Juice. Yeah, I know what it is.
Comrade Khotso, over to you.
I just want to make one more point before I leave. I want to go back to what Comrade Juice said. Times have changed, and this goes out to all men and women out there. Times have changed. You may not be able to express your strength by slaughtering a cow, but I believe already now we are in a time where you can express your strength by the capacity to show love, the capacity to show empathy, and most importantly, honest self reflection. I think that's what's lacking within our society. If we can be men and women who can sit alone with our thoughts and be honest with our internal being and just try to learn and see where there's cracks, see where there's need for healing and where there's need for growth. That's how we're gonna build a society where we're not only serving ourselves but we're serving the next person. So yeah, that's all from my side. Hope everyone enjoyed the episode as much as we did in recording this. So yeah, peace out.
Peace out, comrade. Thank you very much for your closing point. Comrade Slade, over to you.
I don't have much to say. Thank you for watching, and I just hope you make it earlier next time because I was feeling a bit tired, so I wasn't that active. But yeah, and also it was short. I think 1 hour is too short. With 1 hour, yeah. So that's all. Thanks.
Away, comrade. No, 1 hour definitely feels too short. Obviously, we'll see from the audience. Hopefully, we get comments as well from the audience. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. We'll be posting over on TikTok. We're gonna make a TikTok very soon. We're gonna make an Instagram page very soon. We'll post the links in the description, along with what we're speaking about here. Thank you for all that tuned in. God bless. But my final point, obviously, is gonna lead into the next episode. But I think what we can all aspire to be as men is the perspective or the character that Jesus painted out for us. And I think what I said about Ubuntu, it's he's the perfect epitome of what Ubuntu is. I'll leave it there. Obviously, the comrades won't be too satisfied that I'm leaving it on that note. But yeah, shout out. This is from me, Simpure Miaza, the introspection group. Hope you have a good night if you're watching
Shout
this
out to
at night.
Beyonce. Shout out to Beyonce, man. Yeah,
Shout
shout out
out.
to Beyonce.